In the frozen borderlands where wolves wear crowns and betrayal hides behind velvet smiles, a tavern girl with trembling hands will write the words that shatter a kingdom and ignite a bond older than thrones. The goblet hit the floor with a sound like a death knell. Lynette Hale froze, her breath catching in her throat as red wine spread across the stone like fresh blood. The tavern around her roared with laughter and drunken song, but all she could hear was the sharp intake of breath from the woman at the corner table, the woman whose fingers had accidentally knocked the cup from Lynette's tray. Lady Isolde Ravenska smiled. It was the kind of smile that never reached the eyes. "Clumsy girl," she said softly, her voice honey over poison. "Do fetch another, won't you? And perhaps take a moment in the cellars. You look flushed." It wasn't a suggestion. Lynette's hands trembled as she curtsied, keeping her gaze lowered. She'd learned long ago that girls like her, earth-stained, coin-poor, invisible, didn't argue with women who wore velvet and sapphires. Especially not women who sat beside kings. The Howling Heart had seen many strange guests in its 2 centuries of standing, but none stranger than the ones who'd arrived tonight. The air itself had changed when they walked through the door, thick with something Lynette couldn't name but felt in her bones. The other patrons had gone quiet for exactly 3 heartbeats before resuming their conversations in hushed, reverent tones. Because everyone knew who he was. Even if no one dared speak his name aloud. King Aldrich Blackmore sat at the corner table like a wolf among sheep, broad-shouldered and dark-haired, with eyes the color of winter storms. He wore travel leathers instead of royal silks, but authority clung to him like a second skin. When he'd first entered, Lynette had felt something strange pulse through her chest. Recognition without memory. A pull she didn't understand. She dismissed it as fear. She'd been wrong. Now, as she gathered her skirts and hurried toward the cellar stairs, that same pull hummed beneath her skin. Behind her, she heard Lady Isolde's musical laugh, heard the way the Alpha King's deep voice responded with something that might have been affection. The realm called them the perfect match. The North Pack bowed to their union. But Lynette had served enough lies across tavern tables to recognize the taste of them in the air. The cellar stairs descended into cool darkness, lit only by a single torch at the bottom. Lynette's footsteps echoed against stone as she reached for a fresh bottle from the wine rack. Her hands were still shaking. She didn't know why Lady Isolde had sent her down here, but instinct, that strange, humming instinct that had kept her alive through 18 winters, screamed that something was wrong. That's when she heard the voices. They came from beyond the cellar wall, muffled but distinct. Male voices. Speaking in the clipped, efficient tones of men who'd done violence before and would do it again. Lynette's breath stopped. She pressed herself against the cold stone, her heart hammering so loud she was certain they'd hear it. There was a crack in the wall, barely wider than her finger, where mortar had crumbled away. She shouldn't look. She should run upstairs, serve the wine, forget whatever she was about to hear. But her feet wouldn't move. And when she pressed her eye to the crack, the world tilted sideways. 6 men crouched in the abandoned storage room beyond the wall. Hunters, she realized with ice-cold clarity. She recognized the silver-tipped arrows, the crossbows designed for one purpose only. Weapons made to kill what shouldn't die. Made to kill wolves. 30 minutes, one of them was saying, his scarred face grim in the torchlight. She said he'd be vulnerable then. Relaxed. The drinks are laced with wolfsbane, not enough to kill, but enough to slow the shift. Lynette's blood turned to winter. "And you trust her?" another hunter asked, doubt threading through his words. "The Lady Ravenska? She's his mate, for fuck's sake." The scarred man laughed, cold and empty. "She's ambitious. And her beloved cousin will make a far more agreeable king once Blackmore's dead. Lord Maelric knows how to reward loyalty." He checked his crossbow with practiced ease. "Besides, the bitch hates what she's bound to. You've seen how she looks at him when she thinks no one's watching. Like he's a beast she's been chained to." "Because he is," someone else muttered. Exactly. And tonight, that beast dies. The Alpha King falls, the North Pack fractures, and the hunters reclaim what's ours. The old kingdoms rise again. Humans on top. Wolves in the ground where they belong. Lynette's legs nearly gave out. They were going to kill him. They were going to kill King Aldrich Blackmore, and the woman sitting beside him, the woman the realm called his mate, his chosen, his queen, had arranged every piece of it. Terror and something else, something fierce and inexplicable, flooded through Lynette's chest. She should stay silent. She was nobody. A tavern girl who'd never mattered to anyone, who'd survived this long by being invisible, by never drawing attention, by never, ever interfering in the affairs of people who could crush her like an insect. But that pull in her chest, that strange recognition when the Alpha King had walked through the door, was screaming now. Save him. Her hands were trembling so violently she nearly dropped the wine bottle. She set it down carefully, silently, and backed away from the wall. Her mind raced. She couldn't go to the town guard, half of them were probably paid off. She couldn't shout a warning, the hunters would kill her before the words left her throat, and Isolde would call her mad, hysterical. She needed proof. Evidence. Something he couldn't dismiss. Lynette's gaze fell on the writing desk in the corner, a small table where the tavern keeper kept ledgers and correspond. Her heart hammering, she grabbed parchment and a quill with shaking fingers. What do you write when you're about to commit treason? When you're about to shatter someone's world? When every instinct you've ever trusted is screaming that this moment will change everything, that there's no going back, that you're standing on the edge of a cliff you can't see the bottom of. You write the truth. Her hand moved almost without her permission, the words appearing in hurried, desperate strokes. Your mate betrayed you. The hunters are in position. Lynette stared at the words, at the ink still wet on parchment, at the death sentence she'd just written for herself. If she was wrong, she'd hang. If she was right. She didn't let herself finish that thought. She folded the note with trembling fingers, tucked it into her apron, and climbed the cellar stairs on legs that felt like water. The tavern noise crashed over her like a wave, laughter and music and the clink of cups. Normal. Everything looked so unbearably normal. Lady Isolde sat beside the Alpha King, her hand resting on his arm, her smile perfect and poisonous. Aldrich's expression was relaxed, unguarded in a way Lynette suspected was rare for him. He had no idea he was drinking his own death. Lynette's fingers closed around the note in her apron. This was madness. She was nobody. He was a king. Why would he believe her? Why would he even look at her? But then their eyes met across the tavern and the world stopped. Just for a heartbeat. Just for a breath. His winter storm gaze locked onto hers, and something passed between them, something old and wordless and utterly certain. She saw his body tense, saw the way his nostrils flared slightly as if catching a scent he recognized but couldn't place. And Lynette knew, with a bone-deep certainty that defied all logic, that she was about to change both their lives forever. She picked up a fresh pitcher of ale, her heart threatening to beat out of her chest, and crossed the tavern floor. Toward the Alpha King. Toward destiny. Toward the moment everything would shatter. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to Cindy's Wolfheart Stories. If you're new here, please hit that subscribe button and tell me in the comments, where are you watching from right now? Lynette had been 6 winters old when she'd first realized she was different. It was the way the stray dogs in the village square never barked at her. The way she could sense storms hours before they arrived, feel them humming in her bones like a second heartbeat. The way she sometimes understood languages she'd never been taught, old tongues, forgotten dialects that made the village priest cross himself when she accidentally spoke them aloud. Her mother had died bringing her into the world. Her father had followed 3 years later, taken by winter fever and grief. The tavern keeper, Osric, had taken her in out of charity and kept her out of utility. She was quick, quiet, and most importantly, she knew when to be invisible. The girl's got old blood in her, Osric's wife had once whispered. not knowing Lynette was listening from the pantry. Strange blood. Best we don't ask questions. So Lynette had learned to be unremarkable, to keep her eyes down and her thoughts quieter, to survive in the spaces between other people's attention. Until tonight, when survival meant the opposite of invisible. She approached the corner table with the ale pitcher, her pulse thundering in her ears. Up close, King Aldrich Blackmore was even more overwhelming, not just his size, though he was broad-shouldered and tall, but the sheer presence of him. Power radiated off him like heat from a forge. His dark hair was tied back carelessly, and a scar cut through his left eyebrow, giving him a dangerous edge that no royal portrait would ever capture. But it was his eyes that undid her. Storm gray and ancient, holding centuries of wildness barely contained beneath human skin. When they'd locked onto hers moments ago, she'd felt something in her chest answer. A door opening that she hadn't known was closed. "More ale, Your Majesty?" Her voice came out steadier than she'd expected. "Just Aldrich tonight," he said, his voice deep and rough like distant thunder. "I'm traveling without ceremony." Lady Isolde's fingers tightened on his arm, her smile never wavering. "How quaint. Though I do think the staff should maintain proper." "It's fine, Isolde." There was something in his tone that made it clear the discussion was over. Lynette began to pour, her hands remarkably steady despite the terror singing through her veins. This was it. The moment. She couldn't second-guess herself now. As she filled his cup, she let the folded note slip from her palm beneath his hand on the table. Their fingers brushed. The world exploded into sensation. Heat. Recognition. A howl that echoed through her soul even though no sound was made. Lynette gasped, nearly dropping the pitcher. Aldrich's entire body went rigid, his pupils dilating until his eyes were nearly black. For one suspended heartbeat, they were frozen together, her fingers still touching his, that impossible connection blazing between them like lightning given form. "Mine," something whispered in the back of her mind. Not her voice. Older. Wilder. Aldrich's nostrils flared, and she knew, somehow knew, he was scenting her. Actually scenting her, the way wolves did when they found something that mattered. His hand moved, lightning fast, closing over hers and the note beneath. "Who?" he started, his voice hoarse. "Your ale, my lord," Lynette interrupted, her own voice shaking now. She pulled her hand back, the loss of contact physically painful. "Enjoy your evening." She turned and fled before he could stop her, before Lady Isolde's narrowing eyes could sharpen into accusation, before that impossible connection could drag her under completely. Behind the bar, she pressed her back against the wall, breathing hard. Her hand burned where he'd touched it. Across the tavern, she watched Aldrich unfold the note beneath the table, his expression carefully neutral. But she saw the moment he read it, saw every muscle in his body coil tight, saw his jaw clench, saw the way his eyes flickered toward Lady Isolde with something that might have been devastation or rage or both. Isolde was speaking to him, her hand stroking his arm, her smile perfect. Playing her part beautifully. Aldrich's gaze snapped up, searching the tavern until he found Lynette again. The intensity in his eyes should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like coming home. "Trust me," she willed him to understand. "Please, trust me." His hand moved to his belt, and she realized he was checking for weapons. Calculating. Believing. "Girl." Osric's sharp voice cut through her thoughts. "Stop mooning about and clear table 6. Lynette jumped, grabbing a tray. But her attention stayed locked on the corner table, on the Alpha King who was now speaking quietly to his mate, his posture deceptively casual. She knew better. She could feel the predator waking beneath his skin, could sense the way he was preparing for violence. The other patrons had no idea they were sitting in a room that was about to become a battlefield. At table 6, a grizzled merchant was complaining about the roads. "Too many wolves these days," he grumbled into his beer. "Unnatural, I say. Things were better when humans knew their place was above beasts." Perhaps beasts simply know when to bite back, Lynette murmured, collecting empty plates. The merchant blinked at her, startled. She'd never spoken back before. Never dared. But something was changing inside her. Had been changing since the moment Aldrich walked through the door. Since their fingers touched and the world shifted on its axis. She glanced toward the cellar door, thinking of the hunters waiting in the darkness beyond. How long did they have? 20 minutes? 15? Not enough time to run. Not enough time to plan. Just enough time for everything to shatter. Across the tavern, Lady Isolde stood gracefully, pressing a kiss to Aldrich's cheek. I need a moment, my love. The cold wine, you know. She gestured delicately toward the privy. Lynette watched her go, watched the way she moved through the tavern with practiced elegance. And she saw what others didn't, the way Isolde's eyes flickered toward the cellar door. The tiniest nod. The signal. Lynette's heart stopped. She looked at Aldrich. He was already rising from his seat, his movements fluid and purposeful. He wasn't running. He was hunting. Their eyes met one final time across the crowded tavern, and in his gaze she saw a promise. This isn't over. You and I, this isn't over. Then the window shattered. Silver-tipped arrows screamed through the air like falling stars. The tavern exploded into chaos, screams, breaking glass, the thunder of crossbows firing in rapid succession. Lynette dropped her tray and dove behind the bar as the world descended into nightmare. She heard Aldrich roar, a sound too deep, too primal to be human. Heard bones cracking, reshaping. The distinctive sound of a shift. And then the wolves came. Lynette had heard stories about werewolf transformations her entire life. Old wives' tales whispered over winter fires, warnings given to children who wandered too far into the woods. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared her for witnessing it firsthand. The sound alone was terrifying. Bones breaking and reforming with wet cracks that echoed over the screams. Flesh tearing. The distinctive rip of clothing giving way to something massive and furred and utterly impossible. She peered over the bar, her breath caught in her throat. Where King Aldrich Blackmore had stood moments before, there was now a wolf the size of a warhorse. His fur was midnight black with silver threading through it like starlight, his eyes still that devastating storm gray, but now feral, ancient, burning with a predator's intelligence. He was magnificent and terrible and utterly lethal. Every instinct Lynette possessed screamed at her to run, to hide, to make herself as small as possible. But that strange pull in her chest sang a different song. Safe. He's safe. Trust him. The hunters had stormed through the cellar entrance, their crossbows firing in practiced volleys. Silver-tipped bolts slammed into tables, walls, patrons who'd been too slow to drop. The tavern was pandemonium, people screaming, scrambling for the exits, trampling each other in their panic to escape. Aldrich moved like violence given form. He was on the first hunter before the man could reload, jaws closing around the crossbow and crushing it like kindling. The hunter screamed. It was a short sound. 2 more hunters appeared from the cellar, flanking him. Aldrich spun, impossibly fast for something so large, his claws raking across one man's chest and sending him flying into the wall with a sickening crunch. But there were too many. And the wolf's bane, Lynette could see it now, see the way Aldrich's movements were just slightly too slow, the way he stumbled when he should have been graceful. The poisoned wine was working. A bolt caught him in the shoulder. He snarled, twisting to bite through the shaft, but another hunter was already firing. This one aimed for his heart. Lynette didn't think. Didn't question. Just moved. She grabbed the heavy iron poker from beside the fireplace and swung it with every ounce of strength she possessed, catching the hunter across the temple just as he fired. The bolt went wild, embedding itself in the ceiling. The hunter crumpled. Aldrich's massive head swung toward her, those gray eyes widening with something that might have been shock. Or recognition. Or both. Go! Lynette screamed at him, not knowing if he could even understand human speech in this form. The back door. Go! More hunters were pouring through the cellar now. 8, 10, she'd lost count. The scarred leader from before, his face twisted with rage as he saw Aldrich still standing. "The girl," he shouted, pointing at Lynette. She warned him. "Kill her too." Terror crashed through her, but before any of the hunters could turn their weapons on her, Aldrich was there. Moving between her and the crossbows, his body a living shield. He growled, the sound so deep it vibrated in her chest, and she understood the message clearly: touch her and die. A hunter fired anyway. The bolt slammed into Aldrich's flank, and he roared in pain and fury. But he didn't move. Didn't leave her exposed. Something in Lynette's chest cracked open. This man, this wolf, this king she didn't know, was willing to die to protect her. A tavern girl. A nobody. Someone he'd met 5 minutes ago. Why? Another bolt fired. Aldrich staggered, blood matting his dark fur. The wolf's bane was taking hold, slowing his healing, making each wound more dangerous. They were going to kill him. Right here, right in front of her, and there was nothing she could do to. Heat exploded in Lynette's chest. It started as a spark and became an inferno in seconds, racing through her veins like liquid moonlight. Her vision whited out. She gasped, staggering, her hands flying to her chest as power, old power, sleeping power, impossible power, roared to life inside her. The temperature in the tavern dropped 20 degrees in an instant. Every candle, every torch, every source of flame in the building flared silver white and then dimmed to almost nothing. The hunters froze, their eyes wide with superstitious fear. Even Aldrich went still, his massive head tilting as he stared at her. Because Lynette was glowing. Soft silver light emanated from her skin, pulsing in time with her heartbeat. She looked down at her hands and saw strange markings appearing on her palms, symbols she didn't recognize, but somehow understood. Moon signs. Ancient. Powerful. Impossible. Moon-marked, someone breathed. She thought it might have been Aldrich, though the voice was too broken, too between forms to be certain. The scarred hunter's face had gone white. Impossible. They're extinct. The bloodline died out. Apparently not, Lynette heard herself say, though her voice sounded strange. Layered. As if multiple people were speaking through her at once. She stepped forward, placing herself fully between Aldrich and the hunters. She had no weapons. No training. No idea what she was doing. But the power singing through her veins had its own intelligence, its own purpose. And it recognized Aldrich as something worth protecting. "Leave," she said simply. "Now. We have our orders," the scarred hunter started. "I don't care." The silver light around her intensified. "You've failed. He lives. And if you don't leave right now, you'll discover exactly why your ancestors feared my bloodline more than they feared the wolves." She had no idea if that was true. No idea if she could actually do anything beyond glow dramatically. But something in her voice, in the ancient power radiating from her, made the hunters hesitate. The scarred leader looked between her and Aldrich, calculating odds. Finally, he spat on the floor. "This isn't over. The lady will." "The lady is a traitor and a coward," Aldrich's voice rumbled, human again, but still touched with wolf-rough edges. Lynette risked a glance back and immediately wished she hadn't. He was human-shaped again, naked and bloody, silver bolts still embedded in his shoulder and side. But he was standing, his eyes burning with rage that promised retribution. "Tell Isolde," he continued, his voice dropping to something absolutely deadly, "that I'm coming for her. And for Malric. And for every single person who thought they could betray the North Pack and live." The hunters fled. In the sudden silence, broken only by the moans of the wounded and the crackle of dying flames, Lynette's legs finally gave out. She collapsed, the silver light winking out like a snuffed candle, that impossible power draining away as quickly as it had come. Strong arms caught her before she hit the ground. "I've got you," Aldrich murmured, his voice rough but gentle. "Easy now. I've got you." She looked up into storm-gray eyes and felt that pull again, that recognition, that sense of rightness that made no logical sense whatsoever. "Who are you?" she whispered. His expression softened into something that might have been wonder. "I think," he said slowly, carefully, "I could ask you the same question." Because he nodded to where silver light had been pouring from her skin moments before, that shouldn't be possible. The moon marked died out centuries ago. I'm just, Lynette struggled to form words. "I'm a tavern girl." "No," Aldrich said with absolute certainty. "You're not. You never were." His thumb brushed over her palm, tracing where the moon signs had appeared. "You saved my life tonight. Twice. And I don't even know your name." "Lynette," she managed. "Lynette Hale." "Lynette." He said it like a prayer. Like a promise. I know who you are," she interrupted. "Everyone knows who you are." "Then you know I need to leave. Now. Before more hunters come. Before," he stopped, his expression darkening. "Before Isolde realizes her plan failed and tries something worse." The name was like cold water on Lynette's face. Lady Isolde. His mate. The woman who'd just tried to have him killed. "Where will you go?" she asked. "North. To my stronghold. To what's left of my pack." His arms tightened around her slightly. "And you're coming with me." "What?" "No. I can't just. You revealed yourself tonight, Lynette. Those hunters saw what you are. By morning, every kingdom in the realm will know a moon marked still lives." His eyes were fierce. "They will come for you. They will use you or kill you or lock you away to study like some curiosity. The only safe place for you now is with me." "Safe?" She almost laughed. "You're an alpha king whose mate just tried to assassinate him. How is that safe?" "Because," Aldrich said, his voice dropping to something that made heat coil low in her belly, "you're mine to protect now. My responsibility. And I don't let what's mine come to harm." Before she could process that, before she could argue or question or even properly panic, the back door crashed open. 3 massive wolves bounded into the tavern, their lips pulled back in snarls. Lynette tensed, but Aldrich's arms remained steady around her. "Stand down," he commanded. "She's with me." The wolves immediately dropped their aggressive postures, though their eyes remained fixed on Lynette with intense curiosity. They were his guards, she realized. His pack. "We need to move, my king," one of them spoke in a rough, half-human voice. "More hunters are coming from the North Road." Aldrich nodded sharply. He looked down at Lynette, and in his eyes she saw an apology. "This is going to be uncomfortable. Hold on to me." "Wait, what?" He shifted. The world lurched as his body transformed beneath her, for replacing skin, human arms becoming something massive and powerful. Within seconds, she found herself clutching the thick fur of his neck, his wolf form easily large enough to carry her. "Hold tight," one of the other wolves said. "Female," Lynette noted distantly. "The king doesn't drop what's his." And then they were running. Out the back door, into the night, into the snow-covered forest beyond the tavern. The world blurred into darkness and speed and the steady rhythm of Aldrich's powerful strides beneath her. Lynette pressed her face into his fur, her heart hammering, her mind reeling. 12 hours ago, she'd been a tavern girl worried about spilled wine and empty coin purses. Now she was fleeing into the wilderness on the back of an alpha king, marked by ancient power, hunted by kingdoms, and bound by something she didn't understand to a man who was supposed to belong to someone else. As the howling heart disappeared behind them and the forest closed in like a dark embrace, Lynette realized with absolute certainty that her old life was gone. There was no going back. Only forward. Into whatever destiny had just reached up and grabbed her by the throat. They ran for hours. Through ancient forests where the trees grew so thick that moonlight barely penetrated. Across frozen streams that cracked beneath their weight. Over hills that seemed to stretch endlessly toward a horizon Lynette couldn't see in the darkness. The 3 wolves moved like liquid shadows, utterly silent despite their size, navigating terrain that would have broken a horse's legs. Aldrich's stride never faltered, even with her weight on his back and silver bolts still embedded in his flesh. She could feel the heat of him beneath his fur, could sense the pain he refused to show. His wolf was bleeding, wounded, poisoned, but he kept running, because stopping meant death. Lynette's fingers were numb from clutching his fur, her thighs screaming from gripping his sides. But she didn't complain. Didn't dare. Every time she thought about letting go, about begging them to stop, she remembered the hunters' faces. Remembered the way they'd looked at her when her power manifested. Like she was something valuable. Something to be used. The moon marked died out centuries ago, Aldrich had said. Apparently, someone had forgotten to tell her bloodline. Dawn was breaking when they finally stopped, the sky bleeding pink and gold through the trees. They'd entered a valley Lynette didn't recognize, surrounded by peaks so tall they still wore snow even in late spring. The air tasted different here, wilder, cleaner, touched with something ancient. Wolf territory. Deep wolf territory, where humans didn't venture unless they had a death wish. The three wolves who'd accompanied them shifted back to human form, 2 men and the woman who'd spoken earlier. All 3 were naked and utterly unconcerned about it, their bodies marked with scars that told stories of violence survived. They moved with the easy confidence of predators in their own domain. Aldrich shifted last, carefully enough that Lynette could slide off his back before the transformation. She turned away quickly, heat flooding her face. She'd seen naked men before. Tavern life wasn't exactly modest, but this was different. Everything about this was different. "You can look," he said, amusement threading through his voice despite the pain she knew he must be feeling. "I won't bite. Unless asked nicely." I'm not," Lynette stammered, then cursed herself for sounding like an idiot. Footsteps approached, and then warm fabric draped around her shoulders. She glanced up to find the female wolf, now human, wrapped in a cloak someone had produced from somewhere, studying her with sharp amber eyes. "First time among shifters?" the woman asked, not unkindly. "First time among anything, apparently," Lynette muttered, pulling the cloak tighter. "I'm still not entirely convinced this isn't a fever dream." The woman laughed. "I'm Kaelin." That's sad and darken. She nodded toward the 2 men, who were checking Aldrich's wounds with professional efficiency. "We're the king's personal guard. Or what's left of it after tonight's shit show. Why aren't there more of you?" Lynette asked, then immediately regretted it. "Sorry, I shouldn't." "No, it's a fair question." Kaelin's expression darkened. Most of the King's Guard are stationed at the northern stronghold. He was traveling with minimal escort because this was supposed to be a simple diplomatic visit. A show of peace to the border kingdoms. Her lips twisted bitterly. Isolde insisted. Said a full military presence would seem aggressive. She planned this perfectly, Lynette realized, horror crawling up her spine. She wanted him vulnerable. She did. Aldrich's voice made her turn. He was dressed now in spare clothes someone had packed, but she could see blood seeping through the fabric at his shoulder. And she nearly succeeded. Would have succeeded, if not for you. His storm gray eyes locked onto hers, and that pull blazed to life between them again. Stronger now, without the fear and chaos of the attack dampening it. Lynette's breath caught. "We need to keep moving," Zed said, breaking the moment. He was older than the others, with silver threading through his dark hair. "Those hunters will report back to Isolde, and she'll send more. Possibly military forces. She can't let you reach the stronghold alive, my king." "I know." Aldrich's jaw clenched. "How far?" 2 days on foot. Less if we push. Darken, the younger of the 2 men, looked troubled. "But your wounds. Will heal. I've survived worse." Aldrich's tone left no room for argument. He turned to Lynette, his expression softening slightly. "You held up well during the run. Any injuries?" She shook her head, though her entire body ached. "I'm fine. Just confused. Terrified. Possibly still glowing." She looked down at her hands, half expecting to see silver light, but her skin was normal. Disappointingly normal. What happened back there? That power, it just... Awakened, Kaelin interrupted, her eyes gleaming with something like reverence. The moon-marked don't manifest their gifts until they find their. She stopped abruptly, glancing at Aldrich. Until they find their what? Lynette pressed. An uncomfortable silence fell over the group. Kaelin suddenly became very interested in adjusting her cloak. Zed and Darkin exchanged loaded glances. We should discuss this later, Aldrich said carefully. When we're safe. Safe? Lynette's voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. I just manifested impossible power, got kidnapped by werewolves, and I'm being hunted by kingdoms I've never even visited. I think I deserve some answers now. Aldrich studied her for a long moment, and she watched emotions war across his face, concern, frustration, and something else. Something that looked almost like fear. Not of her, but for her. Finally, he sighed. Fine. But we walk while we talk. Every minute we stand here is a minute Isolde's hunters gain on us. They started moving, heading deeper into the valley. The 3 guards took positions around them, Kaelin in front, Zed and Darkin flanking. Protective formation. Like she was something precious. Lynette's skin prickled with unease. The moon-marked, Aldrich began, his voice low, were a bloodline that existed alongside the wolves for millennia. Not shifters themselves, but humans who carried, call it a gift. A connection to the same primal forces that allow us to shift. What kind of connection? The kind that makes or breaks an alpha. He didn't look at her as he spoke, his eyes fixed on the path ahead. Moon-marked individuals had the power to strengthen a wolf's bond with their pack. To amplify their abilities, their healing, their connection to the moon itself. A wolf bonded to a moon-marked became nearly unstoppable. Lynette's stomach dropped. Bonded how? The silence stretched too long. Aldrich, she said quietly. Bonded how? Through a mate bond, Kaelin answered from ahead, her voice matter of fact. The deepest connection 2 beings can share. Soul to soul. Life to life. No. No. That's Lynette stopped walking, forcing Aldrich to turn and face her. That's not possible. You have a mate. Isolde. You're bound to her. Something painful flickered across his face. I have a chosen mate, he corrected. A political alliance. Wolves can choose their partners, form bonds through ceremony and commitment. It's what Isolde and I did 3 years ago. So you're married. In a sense. He ran a hand through his dark hair, frustration evident in every line of his body. But a chosen bond is different from a true mate bond. The latter is fated, predetermined, written into our very souls before we're born. Most wolves never find their true mate. The odds are astronomical. Many live their entire lives with chosen partners and are content. But you found yours, Lynette said, her voice barely audible. His eyes met hers, storm gray and utterly honest. Yes. The word hung between them like a blade. When, she whispered. The moment you touched my hand in the tavern. His voice was rough. The moment our fingers brushed and everything I thought I understood about my life rearranged itself. I've lived 32 years, Lynette. I've known hundreds of women. And in one heartbeat, one accidental touch, I knew you more completely than I've known anyone in my entire existence. Her chest was too tight. She couldn't breathe. This is insane. Yes. I'm nobody. A tavern girl. I have no education, no family, no. You're moon-marked, he interrupted. From a bloodline that was systematically hunted to extinction because kings feared what they represented. What they could do. Your ancestors were queens, Lynette. Consorts to the most powerful alphas in history. And you, his voice dropped. You are the last of your kind. How do you know that? Because if there were others, they would have revealed themselves by now. The moon-marked gift is tied to the mate bond. It only awakens when the bearer finds their destined wolf. He took a step closer, and she felt heat radiating off him. You didn't start glowing until I was in danger. Until your wolf needed you. You're not my, but she couldn't finish the sentence. Because it felt like a lie. That pull in her chest agreed. That instinct that had driven her to save him, to throw herself between him and death without hesitation. That recognition that had blazed through her when they touched. "I don't want this," she said finally. Aldrich flinched like she'd struck him, but he nodded slowly. "I understand. This isn't. I'm not asking you to accept the bond. I'm not asking you for anything except to let me keep you safe until we figure out what happens next." "What happens next is you have a mate waiting for you," Lynette said, her voice harder than she felt. "A mate who tried to kill you, yes, but still your mate in the eyes of your kingdom. What exactly are you planning to do about that?" His expression turned to stone. "I'm going to dissolve the bond. Publicly denounce her for treason. And then I'm going to make sure she and Maelric face justice for what they've done. And then, he looked at her with such naked longing it made her chest ache. And then I'm going to hope that fate hasn't played the cruelest joke imaginable by showing me my true mate only to have her refuse me." Lynette opened her mouth to respond, but Kaelin's sharp whistle cut through the air. "We've got company," the female wolf called. 2 miles east and closing fast. At least 20 riders." Aldrich cursed viciously. "How did they find us this quickly?" "Isolde," Zed said grimly. "She must have sent forces out the moment she got word you escaped." "They've been tracking us. Can we outrun them?" Lynette asked. Darkin shook his head. "Not with the king wounded and poisoned. The wolf's bane is slowing his healing. He needs time to purge it from his system." "Time we don't have," Aldrich growled. He turned to his guards. "Take Lynette and run. Get her to the stronghold. I'll hold them here long enough for you two." "Absolutely not," Kaelin interrupted. "We're not leaving you to die like some tragic hero, you stubborn ass." "That's an order." "We don't take orders from dead kings," Zed said flatly. "And that's what you'll be if we leave you." Lynette watched them argue, watched the way Aldrich's guards absolutely refused to abandon him despite the clear tactical disadvantage. They would die here, all of them, rather than leave their king behind. The silver light in her chest pulsed. "What if I could help?" The words were out before she could stop them. Everyone turned to stare at her. "The power," she continued, her heart hammering. "The moon-marked gift. You said it strengthens wolves, amplifies their abilities. Could it heal him? Purge the poison?" Aldrich's eyes widened. "Theoretically, yes. But Lynette, you have no training. No control. If you try to channel that kind of power without knowing what you're doing, we die anyway if those riders catch us," she pointed out. "At least this way, we have a chance." The sound of horses reached them now, distant but getting closer. 20 riders. Armed and hunting. Aldrich looked at her for a long moment, something fierce and protective and utterly conflicted burning in his eyes. Finally, he nodded once. "Tell me what to do," Lynette said, trying to sound braver than she felt. Kaelin stepped forward. "You need to establish a connection. Skin-to-skin contact. Then you reach for that light you felt before, and you pour it into him. Let your instincts guide you. That's it? That's the training. Moon-marked gifts are instinctual," Zed added. "Your bloodline has been doing this for millennia. Your body remembers even if your mind doesn't." Lynette looked at Aldrich. He was watching her with such intensity it made her skin flush. "Are you sure about this?" "No," he admitted. "But I'm sure about you." That shouldn't have made her heart skip. It absolutely shouldn't have. She stepped closer, close enough to feel his heat, and placed her hands on his chest. His heart thundered beneath her palms, strong and wild and utterly alive. "Close your eyes," he murmured. "Breathe. Feel me. Feel the bond between us, whether you want to accept it or not. It's there. Use it." Lynette closed her eyes and reached inward, searching for that silver light. For that impossible power that had blazed through her in the tavern. Nothing. She reached deeper, panic starting to claw at her throat. Come on. Come on. Lynette. Aldrich's hand covered hers, warm and steady. "Stop trying to force it. Just feel. Feel why you saved me. Feel what drove you to step between me and those crossbows." She thought about that moment. About the way her chest had cracked open when she realized he was willing to die for her. about the certainty that losing him would break something fundamental in her soul, about the way she'd known, bone deep and undeniable, that he was hers to protect. The silver light ignited like a star being born. It poured from her hands into his chest, flooding through him in waves of liquid moonlight. She felt his wounds knitting, felt the poison burning away, felt his strength returning like dawn breaking over mountains. But more than that, she felt him. Every emotion, every memory, every fractured piece of his soul laid bare before her. His loneliness, his duty, the way he'd forced himself to love Isolde because it was what his kingdom needed, only to discover she'd never loved him at all. And underneath everything, a howl of pure recognition that answered her own. Mine, mate. Mine. The connection snapped into place like a key turning in a lock. And Lynette realized with dawning horror and wonder that there was no going back. She'd just bonded herself to an alpha king. Forever. The bond slammed into place like thunder splitting the sky. Lynette gasped, her knees buckling as sensation overwhelmed her. It wasn't just power flowing between them anymore, it was everything. His heartbeat became hers. His breath synced with her lungs. Every nerve ending in her body came alive with awareness of him, of the space he occupied in the world, of the way his soul recognized hers with a certainty that transcended reason. And underneath it all, a primal howl of possession that should have terrified her but instead felt like coming home. Mate. Mine. Forever. Lynette. Aldrich's voice was hoarse, his hands gripping her arms to keep her upright. What did you? I don't know. She could barely speak through the sensations flooding her system. She could feel his wounds healing at an accelerated rate, could sense the wolfsbane burning away like morning mist. But more than that, she could feel his emotions as clearly as her own. Shock, wonder, hunger, and beneath it all, a fierce, overwhelming need to claim, to protect, to never let her go. The bond, Kaelin breathed, her eyes wide with something like awe. She completed the mate bond. Without the ceremony. Without. That's impossible, Zed interrupted. True mate bonds require both parties to consciously accept. Apparently not for Moonmarked, Aldrich said, his voice rough. His storm-gray eyes were locked on Lynette's face, pupils blown wide. Gods, I can feel you. Everything. Your fear, your confusion, your... He stopped abruptly, his jaw clenching. Lynette's face burned as she realized he could sense exactly what she was feeling, including the way her body was responding to his nearness, to the heat radiating off him, to the raw masculinity that seemed to pour off him in waves now that the bond was active. The riders, Darkin said urgently, breaking the spell. They're less than a mile out now. Aldrich's head snapped up, and Lynette felt his predator instincts surge through the bond. But there was something different now. His power was amplified, burning brighter and stronger than before. She could sense it, could feel the way her presence, her gift, was feeding directly into his abilities. How do you feel? Kaelin asked him. A slow, dangerous smile spread across Aldrich's face. Like I could take on an army. His eyes met Lynette's again. Your gift is extraordinary. Can we appreciate the miracle later? Zed pressed. We still need to move. No. Aldrich's voice carried absolute authority. We fight. Here. Now. I'm done running from traitors and cowards. My king. I'm at full strength for the first time in hours. I have my mate. He stopped, seeming to realize what he'd just said aloud. I have a Moonmarked amplifying my power. 20 riders aren't enough. Not anymore. Through the bond, Lynette felt his certainty. Felt the way his wolf was rising to the surface, eager for the hunt. But she also felt something else, a thread of possessive fury directed at Isolde. At the woman who'd tried to kill him, who'd betrayed their chosen bond, who'd nearly succeeded in ending his life. She knew, Lynette said suddenly, the pieces clicking into place. Isolde. She knew about the true mate bond, didn't she? That's why she wanted you dead before we reached the stronghold. Aldrich's expression darkened. What are you talking about? Think about it. Lynette's mind was racing, connections forming that she couldn't quite explain but knew were true. She insisted you travel with minimal guard. She arranged for you to stop at that specific tavern. She sent me to the cellars at the exact moment the hunters were in position. Her breath caught. She wanted me to overhear. She wanted me to warn you. That makes no sense, Darkin said. Why would she? Because she needed me to reveal myself, Lynette interrupted, her voice gaining strength. She needed proof that a moon marked still existed. And she needed Aldrich to be there when I manifested my power, so the bond would. She stopped, horror flooding through her. Oh gods. She was trying to force the bond to activate so she could claim I was a threat. A seductress using forbidden magic to steal the king from his rightful mate. Silence fell over the group. That's... Kaelin started, then stopped. That's actually brilliant. Diabolical, but brilliant. She gambled that the hunters would kill us both, Aldrich said slowly, his voice deadly quiet. But if we survived, she had a backup plan. Turn the entire kingdom against Lynette. Paint her as a witch who'd ensnared the king with dark magic. And position herself as the wronged woman, Zed added grimly. The faithful mate betrayed by her husband's unnatural obsession. She could demand Lynette's execution and no one would question it. Lynette's blood ran cold. But I didn't know. I didn't plan any of this. Doesn't matter, Kaelin said flatly. By the time Isolde's done spinning the story, you'll be the villain and she'll be the victim. The kingdoms will demand your head. Not if I denounce her first, Aldrich growled. Not if I reveal her treachery before she can spread her lies. And who will believe you? A new voice called out. They spun toward the sound. Emerging from the trees, flanked by armed riders, was a woman who could have been carved from ice and cruelty. Lady Isolde Ravenska looked nothing like the elegant creature from the tavern. Her dark hair was wild, her fine clothes mud-splattered, her beautiful face twisted with rage. But it was her eyes that made Lynette's skin crawl, cold and calculating and utterly devoid of the warmth she'd shown in public. Who will believe the Alpha King abandoned his mate for a tavern whore? Isolde continued, her voice dripping venom. Who will believe you weren't bewitched by moon-marked sorcery? The very magic our ancestors outlawed for exactly this reason. 20 riders fanned out behind her, crossbows trained on Aldrich's group. But Lynette noticed something. They weren't hunters. They wore the colors of House Ravenska. Isolde's personal guard. You brought your own men, Aldrich observed, his voice dangerously soft. Not kingdom forces. Not the royal guard. Your family's soldiers. Why Isolde? A flicker of unease crossed her face before the mask of righteous fury returned. Because I knew you'd be compromised. That the girl would have her claws in you by now. My men are loyal to me, not to whatever dark bond she's created. Dark bond. Kaelin laughed harshly. You tried to have him assassinated, you treacherous bitch. You allied with hunters and poisoned his drink and sold out your own mate for. She stopped. For what exactly? What did Maelric promise you that was worth all this? Isolde's smile was knife-sharp. Everything your precious king refused to give me. Power. True power, not just the ceremonial scraps he thought I should be content with. Maelric understands that the North should be ruled by humans, not beasts. That the old ways need to die so civilization can flourish. So you'd exterminate your own mate's people? Aldrich's voice was soft with disbelief and pain. Through the bond, Lynette felt his heart break. Despite everything, some part of him had hoped this wasn't real. That the woman he'd chosen, the woman he'd tried to love, hadn't truly betrayed him this completely. You were never my mate, Isolde spat. You were a political necessity. A monster I had to bind myself to because my father thought an alliance with the wolves would strengthen our house. Do you know what it's like? Sharing a bed with something that stops being human when the moon is full? Knowing that at any moment you could lose control and tear me apart. I would never. You're not human. The scream tore from her throat, raw and primal. None of you are. You're abominations pretending at civilization, and the world would be better if you were all dead. The hatred in her voice was so pure, so absolute, that Lynette physically recoiled. This wasn't just about power or politics. This was something deeper. Something broken. "You're right," Aldrich said quietly. Through the bond, Lynette felt his emotions settle into cold determination. "I'm not human, and you were never truly my mate. The bond we shared was based on lies, yours, if not mine. So, let me make this simple, Isolde." He took a step forward, and power radiated off him in waves. The amplification from Lynette's gift made him seem larger, more commanding, touched with something ancient and utterly dominant. "I, Aldrich Blackmore, Alpha King of the North, formally dissolve the chosen bond between myself and Isolde Ravenska. I name her traitor, conspirator, and attempted murderer. And I claim my true mate before witnesses and the eyes of the moon." His hand extended toward Lynette, palm up. An invitation. A choice. The world seemed to hold its breath. "Don't do this," Isolde said, her voice shaking now. "Not with fear, but with fury. If you claim her, if you legitimize that bond, you'll tear the kingdom apart. Half the realm still fears the moon-marked. They'll see this as proof that their worst nightmares were justified. They'll rise against you." "Let them try," Aldrich said simply. Lynette stared at his outstretched hand. At the man who was offering her everything, a crown, a kingdom, a bond that would tie her soul to his for whatever remained of their lives. She'd woken up this morning a nobody. A girl who served ale and kept her head down and wanted nothing more than to survive another day. Now she was being asked to become a queen. It was insane. Impossible. She should refuse. She should. Through the bond, she felt Aldrich's emotions. Not demanding. Not pressuring. Just waiting. Hoping. Giving her the choice Isolde had apparently never felt she had. "If I take your hand," Lynette said slowly, "everything changes." "You know that." "Everything already changed," he replied. "The moment you slipped me that note. The moment you chose to save a monster you didn't know instead of protecting yourself. You changed my entire world, Lynette Hale. I'm just asking for the chance to be worthy of it." Isolde screamed something. Her guards raised their crossbows, and Kaelin, Zed, and Darken shifted into wolf form, placing themselves between their king and the threat. But Lynette only had eyes for Aldrich. For the storm-gray gaze that held hers with such naked honesty it made her chest ache. For the man who'd been willing to die protecting a tavern girl he didn't know. For the king who'd given her a choice when he could have simply taken what the bond had already created between them. She placed her hand in his. Silver light exploded from their joined palms, shooting into the sky like a beacon. The mate bond, already formed, roared to full life, no longer hidden, no longer tentative. It blazed between them with a force that made Isolde's guards stumble back, made the horses scream and rear, made even the trees seem to bow toward its power. "Mine," Aldrich breathed, pulling her against his chest. "Yours," Lynette whispered back, and meant it with every fiber of her being. The bond settled into place like stars, finding their constellation. Permanent. Eternal. Unbreakable. "Kill them," Isolde shrieked. "Kill them both. Now." The crossbows fired. But Aldrich was already moving, already shifting, his body exploding into his massive wolf form. Kaelin, Zed, and Darken moved as one, a coordinated attack that spoke of years fighting together. And Lynette. Lynette felt her gift surge in response to danger, felt it pour into Aldrich through the bond, amplifying his already formidable power to something approaching godlike. The battle was brief and brutal. Aldrich moved like death itself, his jaws crushing crossbows and tearing through armor with ease. The other three wolves fought with savage precision, taking down riders before they could reload. Lynette stood in the center of it all, silver light pouring from her like a fountain, feeding power into her mate and his pack, making them faster, stronger, nearly invulnerable. Within minutes, Isolde's guard lay defeated, dead or unconscious, or fled into the forest. Only Isolde remained, backed against a tree, her beautiful face pale with terror as Aldrich's massive wolf form stalked toward her. "Please," she whimpered, all her earlier bravado gone. "Please, Aldrich. We were mates. That has to mean something. You can't just—" He shifted back to human form, standing over her with blood on his hands and fury in his eyes. "You're right," he said softly. "It does mean something. It means you betrayed something sacred. Something that, had it been real, I would have died to protect." He leaned closer. "So no, I won't kill you. That would be mercy you don't deserve." He straightened, his voice carrying absolute authority. "Isolde Ravenska, you are hereby exiled from the north. If you set foot in my territory again, if you speak my name or my mate's, if you draw one breath in opposition to this pack, I will let my wolves have you. And they won't be as kind as I'm being now." "You can't." "I can," Aldrich interrupted. "I'm the Alpha King. And you're nothing. Not anymore." He turned his back on her, the ultimate dismissal, and walked to where Lynette stood trembling. His hands cupped her face with infinite gentleness, despite the violence still staining his skin. "Are you hurt?" he asked. She shook her head, unable to speak past the lump in her throat. Behind them, she heard Isolde scramble to her feet and run, crashing through the forest like a wounded animal. "Let her go," Aldrich said to his pack. "She's not worth the effort." Kaelin, human again and wrapped in a cloak, frowned. "She'll go straight to Maelric. Tell him everything. They'll come for us with everything they have." "I know." Aldrich's thumb brushed over Lynette's cheek. "But first, we get to the stronghold. We gather the pack. And we prepare for war." "War?" Lynette's voice was small. "War," he confirmed. "Because Isolde was right about one thing. The moment I claimed you, the moment I made our bond public, I divided the kingdom. Those who fear the Moon-Marked will rally against us. And those who remember the old ways, who understand what you represent, will stand with us." His eyes blazed with determination. "Whatever comes next, we face it together. You and me. Alpha and mate." Through the bond, Lynette felt his certainty. Felt the way he truly meant every word. And she realized, with dawning wonder and terror, that she'd just become the most powerful and most hunted woman in the realm. The northern stronghold rose from the mountains like a crown of stone and defiance. It took them another full day to reach it, traveling through terrain so treacherous that Lynette would have died a dozen times without Aldrich carrying her in wolf form. The packlands were vast and wild, protected by geography as much as by the wolves who called them home. By the time the fortress came into view, Lynette was exhausted, filthy, and more terrified than she'd ever been in her life. Because reality was setting in. She wasn't just some girl who'd made an impulsive choice anymore. She was the Alpha King's mate, his queen in the eyes of Wolf Law. And the moment they entered that stronghold, the moment the pack saw her, there would be no more hiding. No more pretending this was temporary insanity they could both walk away from. "I can feel your fear," Aldrich said quietly. He'd shifted to human form for the final approach, walking beside her. Through the bond. "It's loud." "I'm about to meet your entire pack," Lynette said, her voice tight. "The people who were expecting Isolde as their queen. The wolves who've probably heard a dozen horrifying rumors about moon-marked sorcery. Why wouldn't I be terrified?" His hand found hers, warm and steady. "Because they're going to love you. You can't know that." "I can." He stopped walking, turning to face her fully. The late afternoon sun caught in his dark hair, making him look like something out of legend. "I'm their alpha. My wolf recognized you as mate. That means something to pack bonds, Lynette. They'll feel the rightness of it, even if they don't understand it yet." "And if they don't?" She hated how small her voice sounded. Aldrich's expression turned fierce. "Then they'll learn. Because you're mine, and I don't negotiate when it comes to what's mine." The possessive intensity in his eyes made heat coil low in her belly despite her fear. The bond hummed between them, responding to his proximity, his scent, the way he was looking at her like she was something precious and irreplaceable. We should keep moving, she managed. His lips quirked in a knowing smile that said he felt exactly what the bond was doing to her. As my queen commands. The gates of the stronghold opened before they reached them. Word of their approach had obviously preceded them. Wolves in human form lined the courtyard, dozens of them, all watching with varying degrees of curiosity, suspicion, and shock as their king walked through the entrance with a strange woman at his side and blood still staining his clothes. He's alive, someone breathed. Thank the moon, he's alive. Where's Lady Isolde? Another voice called out. Who's the girl? Is that by the gods? Is that a moon marked? The whispers spread like wildfire. Lynette felt every eye on her, felt the weight of their judgment and their fear. Her hand tightened in Aldrich's, and through the bond she felt his absolute calm. His certainty. A woman emerged from the crowd, tall and regal, with silver hair despite her apparent youth and eyes that held centuries of wisdom. Power radiated off her in waves, different from Aldrich's raw dominance, but no less formidable. My king, she said, her voice carrying across the courtyard. We received word of an attack. Of betrayal. Her gaze shifted to Lynette, and something flickered in those ancient eyes. Recognition? And of impossibilities made manifest. Elder Kara, Aldrich greeted her with obvious respect. I need to convene the Pack Council. Immediately. I suspected as much. Kara's attention hadn't left Lynette. The moon-marked walks among us again. I never thought I'd live to see it. You know what I am? Lynette asked, then immediately regretted speaking. She wasn't sure of the protocol here, wasn't sure if she was even allowed to address the elder directly. But Kara's expression softened. Child, I'm 537 years old. I was alive when the last moon-marked was executed. I remember the light dying from this world when your bloodline was extinguished. She stepped closer, her gaze intense. Or so we thought. My family was just normal, Lynette said weakly. There was never any indication that we were anything special. The gift sleeps until the mate bond activates, Kara explained. Your ancestors likely knew what you were and hid it. Protected you. Because the humans hunted your kind to near extinction. She looked at Aldrich. The council will want answers. Many answers. They'll get them, Aldrich promised. But first, I need to see to my mate. She's been through hell in the past 2 days and she needs rest. Mate. He'd said it so casually, so naturally, in front of his entire pack. The courtyard erupted in shocked murmurs. Mate, someone echoed. But Lady Isolde. Betrayed me, Aldrich's voice cut through the noise like a blade. Conspired with hunters to have me assassinated. Allied with my enemies to seize the throne. The chosen bond between us is dissolved. Isolde Ravenska is no longer welcome in the north. Stunned silence. And this girl, a male voice called out. Lynette couldn't see the speaker through the crowd. You've known her for what, 2 days? And you expect us to accept her as queen? I expect, Aldrich said, his voice dropping to something absolutely dominant, you to accept what the moon has decreed. Lynette is my true mate. The bond is complete. She is your queen in the eyes of ancient law, regardless of how recently we met. The humans won't accept it, someone else argued. They'll see this as proof that the moon-marked are dangerous. That they steal wolves from their rightful mates through dark magic. Then the humans can try to take her from me, Aldrich growled. And learn exactly why my ancestors were called the Blackmore line. The threat hung in the air like smoke. Elder Kara raised her hand, and the murmurs died. This matter will be discussed in council. But for now, the king has returned alive, and that is cause for gratitude. See to your mate, Aldrich. We'll convene at moonrise. It wasn't permission. It was an order, given with the authority of someone far older and more powerful than her apparent youth suggested. Aldrich nodded respectfully and led Lynette through the crowd, toward the central keep. The stronghold was beautiful in a brutal way, all stone and iron and banners depicting wolves in various stages of hunt. Lynette felt utterly out of place in her dirty tavern dress, with her tangled hair and earth-stained hands. Everyone they passed stared at her with expressions ranging from awe to fear to outright hostility. "I don't belong here," she whispered once they were alone in a corridor. "You belong at my side," Aldrich corrected. "Everything else is negotiable." He led her to a chamber that could only be the king's quarters, massive and austere, dominated by a bed large enough for multiple people and a fireplace that roared with fresh flames. Someone had obviously prepared it for their arrival. The moment the door closed behind them, the facade of confidence Aldrich had maintained crumbled slightly. He leaned against the door, exhaustion clear in every line of his body. "How bad are your wounds?" Lynette asked, moving toward him instinctively. "Mostly healed. Your gift is remarkable." He caught her hand before she could check for herself. "I'm fine, Lynette. But you need to rest. To eat. You've been amplifying my power for days without understanding what that costs you." Now that he mentioned it, she did feel hollowed out. Exhausted in a way that went beyond physical tiredness. The silver light had been burning through her constantly, feeding the bond, feeding him. "I don't know how to stop," she admitted. "You don't need to stop. Just moderate. Think of it like a flame you can control rather than a wildfire." His hands moved to her shoulders, his touch gentle despite the calluses and scars. "I should have been teaching you this from the start." "Should have." "You were busy not dying," Lynette interrupted. "I think we can forgive the lack of moon-marked training under the circumstances." A ghost of a smile crossed his face. "You're remarkably calm about all this." "I'm really not," she confessed. "I'm terrified and overwhelmed, and I have no idea what I'm doing. But I'm also—" She trailed off, unsure how to explain. "What?" he prompted. "Happy," she admitted quietly. "Which is insane, because my life just fell apart, and I'm being hunted by kingdoms and your pack barely tolerates me. But when I'm near you, when I feel the bond between us, it's like something in me that was always broken finally makes sense." Aldrich's eyes darkened with emotion. "Do you have any idea what it does to me, hearing you say that?" "I can feel it," she reminded him. "Through the bond. I can feel everything you're feeling." "Then you know how much I want to kiss you right now." The air between them charged with sudden tension. Lynette's breath caught. They'd barely touched beyond the necessary, holding hands while traveling, his arms around her when he carried her in wolf form. But this was different. This was choice. "We barely know each other," she said, even as her body swayed toward his. "I know you saved my life twice," he murmured. "I know you're brave and clever, and you haven't run screaming despite having every reason to. I know your soul fits mine like it was crafted for exactly that purpose. And I know," his hand came up to cup her cheek. "I know I've waited my entire life to find you, even when I didn't know I was looking." "Aldrich." "Tell me no," he said softly. "Tell me you need time, need space, need anything. I'll give it to you. All of it. But gods, Lynette, please don't ask me to pretend I don't want you. Don't ask me to pretend this bond is only political." Through their connection, she felt the truth of his words. Felt the desperate want tempered by iron control. He would wait. Would give her all the time in the world. Would never push for something she wasn't ready to give. Which, perversely, made her want to give it. She rose on her toes and pressed her lips to his. The bond exploded between them like summer lightning. Aldrich's arms banded around her waist, pulling her flush against him as he deepened the kiss with a hunger that made her knees weak. She tasted desperation and relief and something darker, more primal, the wolf recognizing its mate, claiming what was his. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, his eyes had taken on the distinctive glow of his wolf rising to the surface. "We should stop," he said roughly. "You're exhausted, and I'm barely in control, and this isn't. We should stop." "What if I don't want to stop?" The words were out before she could second-guess them. He groaned, pressing his forehead against hers. "You're killing me. You know that? I'm trying to be honorable here." "I don't want you to be honorable," Lynette said, surprising herself with her boldness. "I want." A sharp knock at the door interrupted them. Aldrich cursed viciously. "What?" he snarled. Apologies, my king. Kaelin's voice came through the heavy wood. But there's news. Urgent news. Aldrich's eyes closed briefly, and through the bond Lynette felt his frustration warring with duty. Duty won. It always would, she realized. That was who he was. He pressed one more quick, fierce kiss to her lips. We'll continue this conversation later. I promise. Then he opened the door to find Kaelin looking grim. What is it? Aldrich asked. Maelric has made his move, Kaelin said. He's declared you unfit to rule. Claims you've been compromised by moonmarked sorcery and that the pack needs a new alpha. One not corrupted by dark magic. She paused. He's gathering support. And he's not alone. Half the southern territories have pledged to his banner. The color drained from Aldrich's face. Half? Already? The humans spread word fast. They're calling Lynette a witch. A seductress who used forbidden magic to steal the king's mind. There are already calls for her execution in 3 kingdoms. Kaelin's expression was sympathetic. I'm sorry, but this is worse than we thought. Through the bond, Lynette felt Aldrich's emotions: royal fury, fear, determination. And underneath it all, a bone-deep terror that he'd brought this down on her. That his choice to claim her had painted a target on her back. Convene the council, he said quietly. Now. We need to. There's more, Kaelin interrupted. Maelric has a sold with him. She's claiming you forced the bond on Lynette against her will. That you used your alpha dominance to coerce her into accepting the mate bond to cover up your betrayal of your rightful mate. Lynette felt her stomach drop. That's not I chose. We know, Kaelin said gently. But they're spinning a story that fits what the humans want to believe. That the Moonmarked are victims of wolf aggression, not dangerous sorceresses. It makes them sympathetic while painting you as the villain. Clever, Aldrich said bitterly. Isolde always was clever. The council is waiting, Kaelin continued. And Elder Kara wants to speak with Lynette. Alone. Aldrich's arm tightened around Lynette protectively. No. She stays with me. It's fine, Lynette said quietly, even though it wasn't. Even though the thought of facing that ancient, powerful wolf without Aldrich at her side terrified her. I'll be okay. Through the bond, Aldrich felt her fear. His jaw clenched. Lynette, I need to prove I'm not just hiding behind you, she said. To them. To myself. Let me do this. For a long moment, he just looked at her. Then he nodded slowly. If she threatens you, if she makes you uncomfortable in any way, call for me. I'll hear you through the bond. Lynette managed a weak smile. My fierce protector. Always, he said simply. Kaelin led her through the stronghold to a tower room that overlooked the mountains. Elder Kara waited by the window, her silver hair gleaming in the fading light. Leave us, she said to Kaelin, who obeyed immediately. The door closed with a finality that made Lynette's skin prickle. You're afraid of me, Kara observed. You're 500 years old and could probably kill me with a thought, Lynette said. Yes, I'm afraid of you. To her surprise, the elder laughed. Honest. Good. The last thing we need is another pretty liar. Her expression sobered. Tell me, child. Do you understand what you've done? What accepting the mate bond means? I'm beginning to, Lynette said carefully. You've made yourself a target for every kingdom that fears what you represent. You've divided the North Pack down the middle. You've given Aldrich's enemies the perfect weapon to use against him. Kara's eyes were unervingly direct. And you've accepted a bond that cannot be broken. Not by death. Not by distance. Not even by your own will, should you later regret it. I know. Do you? The elder moved closer. Because what I sense in you is a girl playing at being brave. A child who stumbled into power she doesn't understand and is terrified of what comes next. The words hit too close to truth. Lynette's hands clenched into fists. What do you want me to say? That I'm scared? That I don't know what I'm doing? That sometimes I think this is all a nightmare I'll wake up from? Her voice rose despite her attempt to stay calm. Yes, I'm all those things. But I'm also here. I'm also his mate. And I'm also not running away, no matter how much easier that would be. Kara studied her for a long moment. Then she smiled, a real smile, warm and approving. Good. Because running would kill you both. Lynette blinked. What? The mate bond, once completed, is not optional. If you were to leave, to try to break the connection, it would destroy you both from the inside out. Slowly, painfully, until death became a mercy. The elder's expression was grave. That's why I needed to see you. To know if you were someone who would run when things got hard. Because if you were, I'd have to find a way to break the bond before it was too late. Horror flooded through Lynette. You can break it? At great cost to you both. But yes, if it's done soon enough, if the bond hasn't fully settled. Kara trailed off. But I don't think that's necessary now. You're stronger than you look, Lynette Hale. I don't feel strong. No one does when their world falls apart. The elder's hand rested briefly on Lynette's shoulder. But you will survive this. And so will he. As long as you stand together. A commotion from outside interrupted them. Shouting. The sound of running feet. Kara moved to the window, her expression tightening. It seems standing together will be tested sooner than expected. What is it? Lynette joined her at the window. Below, in the courtyard, chaos had erupted. Wolves were shifting, weapons being drawn. And at the gates, an army. Not human. Wolf. Dozens of them, all in fighting formation, led by a man who could have been Aldrich's brother except for the cruelty etched into every line of his face. Maelric. And beside him, beautiful and terrible, was Isolde. They came for you faster than I expected, Kara murmured. Maelric must be more desperate than we thought. Through the bond, Lynette felt Aldrich's fury spike. Felt him racing toward her location even though she wasn't in immediate danger. What do we do? Lynette asked. We go down, Kara said calmly. We face them. And we show that the North doesn't bow to traitors. I don't know how to fight. You don't need to fight, child. The elder's eyes gleamed with something ancient and dangerous. You just need to stand beside your mate and let them see what they're up against. Let them see what happens when someone threatens a true mate bond. Lynette's hands trembled, but she nodded. Together, they descended to meet the army at the gates. The courtyard had transformed into a battlefield waiting to happen. Aldrich stood at the center, power radiating off him in waves, his pack arrayed behind him in a show of force. But Lynette could see the division. Some of the wolves looked uncertain, their loyalty clearly wavering between their alpha and the promises Maelric must have made. Maelric himself looked every inch the pretender king. Taller than Aldrich, with the same dark hair, but eyes that held calculation instead of storm. He wore ceremonial armor that gleamed in the torchlight, playing the part of savior come to rescue his people from tyranny. Cousin, he called out, his voice carrying across the courtyard. Stand down. There's been enough bloodshed. Enough chaos. Let's end this peacefully. Peacefully? Aldrich's laugh was bitter. You allied with my would-be assassins and you want to talk about peace? I allied with those who saw what everyone else was too blind to acknowledge. Maelric gestured to the wolves behind him. You've been compromised, Aldrich. Seduced by dark magic into abandoning your true mate for a tavern girl who reeks of sorcery. Careful, Aldrich's voice dropped to something deadly. You're speaking about my queen. She's a moon-marked, someone in Maelric's group shouted. An abomination. Our ancestors hunted her kind to extinction for a reason. Because they were afraid, Elder Kara's voice rang out as she and Lynette emerged from the keep. Afraid of power they couldn't control. Afraid of women who could make or break an alpha with their will alone. All eyes turned to Lynette. She'd never felt more exposed in her life. She was still wearing her dirty tavern dress, still looked like exactly what Maelric had called her, a nobody who'd stumbled into power she didn't understand. But she lifted her chin and walked to Aldrich's side, her hand finding his. The moment they touched, silver light pulsed between them. Visible. Undeniable. The mate bond made manifest. Gasps rippled through both groups. You see, Maelric's voice was triumphant. Dark magic. She's controlling him, making him believe. I'm not controlling anyone, Lynette interrupted, her voice stronger than she felt. I saved his life. That's all. I'm sorry if that offends you, but I'm not going to apologize for refusing to let him be murdered by the woman he trusted. Isolde stepped forward, her beautiful face arranged in an expression of wounded dignity. You poisoned his mind against me. Used your curse gifts to make him see betrayal where there was only love. You literally allied with hunters to have him killed, Kaelin said flatly. We have witnesses. Hunters I only contacted after I sensed his mind being corrupted. Isolde's voice rose, playing to the crowd. I was trying to save him from her influence, to free him before the bond could take full hold. You tried to have me assassinated 3 months ago, Aldrich said quietly. Silence crashed over the courtyard. What? Maelric's carefully constructed expression flickered. 3 months ago, during the spring hunt, Aldrich continued, his voice carrying to every corner of the courtyard. An arrow, silver-tipped, that just missed my heart. Passed off as an accident. A stray shot from an overeager hunter. His eyes locked on Isolde. Except I found the bow later. Hidden in your chambers. With your family crest carved into the grip. Isolde's face went white. I wanted to believe it was paranoia, Aldrich said, and through the bond Lynette felt his pain, the betrayal running deeper than one assassination attempt, cutting into years of trying to make a chosen bond work with someone who'd only ever seen him as a monster. I wanted to believe my mate wasn't trying to kill me. So I said nothing. Watched you more carefully. And noticed all the little things I'd been too blind to see before. You're lying, Isolde said, but her voice shook. You're making up stories to justify abandoning me for your whore. Aldrich moved so fast Lynette barely saw it. One moment he was beside her, the next he had Isolde by the throat, lifted off her feet, his eyes blazing with wolf light. Call her that again, he growled, and I'll forget you were ever anything to me. I'll forget mercy. I'll forget everything except the way my wolf wants to rip your throat out for threatening what's mine. Aldrich, Elder Kara's voice cut through the tension. Put her down. She's not worth the darkness. For a heartbeat, Lynette thought he wouldn't listen. Through the bond, she felt his rage, his wolf demanding blood for the insult to their mate. But then she felt something else, her presence, her influence, calming the savage fury, reminding him who he was. He dropped Isolde, who crumpled to the ground gasping. You were never my true mate, Aldrich said, his voice cold now. You were a political alliance that I tried to make into something real because I thought it was my duty. But you never loved me. Never even tried to see me as anything but a beast to be endured until you could find a way to be free. And what is she? Isolde spat, pointing at Lynette. You've known her for days. You know nothing about her except that she has power you want to control. I know she chose to save my life when staying silent would have been safer, Aldrich said. I know she accepted a bond that terrifies her because her soul recognized mine. I know she's braver than anyone I've ever met, including you. He turned his back on Isolde, the ultimate dismissal. I know everything I need to know. This is madness, Maelrich interjected, trying to regain control of the situation. The entire realm will rise against you if you keep her. The humans will demand her execution. The other packs will see this as proof that the North has been corrupted. You'll tear everything apart for a girl you barely know. Then I'll tear everything apart, Aldrich said simply. Through the bond, Lynette felt his absolute certainty. He meant it. He would burn the entire world down before he let anyone take her from him. It should have terrified her. Instead, it made something fierce and wild bloom in her chest. You're not thinking clearly, Maelrich pressed. The moon-marked magic is clouding your judgment. If you would just let us examine the bond, let the elders determine if it's even legitimate. The bond is legitimate, Kara interrupted. I've examined it myself. It's a true mate bond, not sorcery or coercion. The strongest I've seen in my 5 centuries of life. Then she's dangerous, someone in Maelrich's group shouted. If she's that powerful, If she can influence an alpha that completely, what's to stop her from controlling all of us? I don't want to control anyone, Lynette said, finding her voice. I just want to live. She stopped, looking around at the faces watching her with fear and suspicion and barely concealed hatred. I want people to stop acting like I'm some kind of monster when all I did was refuse to let someone be murdered in front of me. You're a moon-marked, Isolde said, having recovered enough to stand. That makes you a monster by definition. No, Elder Kara said sharply. That makes her powerful. There's a difference. One our ancestors understood before fear made them forget. She stepped forward, addressing the entire courtyard. The moon-marked were not monsters. They were gifts. Partnerships between human and wolf that elevated both. Yes, they were powerful. Yes, they could influence an alpha. But they also stabilized packs, prevented wars, brought prosperity to wolf territories for generations. And when they turned against us? Malric challenged. When they used their power to destroy instead of build? That happened exactly once in recorded history, Kara said coldly. One moon-marked who was brutalized by her mate and took revenge. One. And for that, humans decided to exterminate an entire bloodline. Hunt them down like animals and burn them for witchcraft. She looked at Lynette with something like pride. This girl is the last. The final remnant of something beautiful that we allowed fear to destroy. And now you want to finish what your ancestors started. Silence. Then, from the back of Aldrich's group, a young wolf stepped forward. I stand with my alpha. And with his mate. Another wolf joined him. Then another. Within moments, half of Aldrich's pack had moved to form a protective circle around him and Lynette, their message clear. But half wasn't all. A significant number remained where they were, uncertainty written across their faces. This isn't over, Malric said, his voice tight with barely controlled fury. The council will meet. We'll put this to a vote. And when they choose me as alpha, when they cast you out for your reckless endangerment of the pack, don't say I didn't warn you. Fine, Aldrich said. We'll put it to a vote. Tomorrow night. Full moon. The entire pack witnesses. His eyes blazed with challenge. And we'll let the moon itself judge who the rightful alpha is. Malric's expression flickered surprise, then calculation. You're challenging me? Formally. I'm defending my position as alpha, Aldrich corrected. Against a pretender who thinks he can steal my crown through politics and lies. And if you lose? Malric pressed. I won't. Simple. Absolute. Through the bond, Lynette felt his confidence. But she also felt something else, exhaustion. Pain from wounds not fully healed. The lingering effects of the wolf's bane working through his system. He wasn't at full strength. And Malric knew it. Then tomorrow night, Malric agreed, a slow smile spreading across his face. We'll see what the moon decrees. He turned and left, taking half the courtyard with him. Isolde shot one last venomous look at Lynette before following, her beautiful face twisted with hatred. The moment they were gone, Aldrich's legs nearly gave out. Lynette was there instantly, supporting him, silver light instinctively pouring from her hands to stabilize him. I'm fine, he muttered. You're not, she said flatly. You're hurt and exhausted, and you just challenged someone to what is essentially a fight to the death tomorrow night while you can barely stand. I'll be fine by tomorrow, he insisted. Will you? Elder Kara's voice was sharp. The wolf's bane is still in your system. Your wounds are barely closed. And Malric is fresh, strong, and has been preparing for this moment for months. She looked at Lynette. Unless your mate can amplify your healing enough to purge the last of the poison. I don't know how, Lynette admitted. I don't know how to do any of this deliberately. It just happens when he's in danger, Kara finished. When your instincts take over. That's the problem with untrained gifts. They only manifest under extreme conditions. So train me, Lynette said desperately. Please. Show me how to control it so I can help him. Kara's expression was sympathetic but firm. That kind of training takes years, child. We have hours. Then we make the hours count, Lynette said, her voice hardening with determination. I didn't save him from hunters just to watch him die in some ridiculous challenge because I don't know how to use my own power. Through the bond, she felt Aldrich's surge of pride and love. It nearly undid her. "Stubborn," he murmured, his hand coming up to cup her cheek. "My stubborn, fierce mate." "Your mate who's going to save your life again," she corrected. "And again. As many times as necessary." Kara studied them both for a long moment. Then she nodded. "Very well. But we start now. And Aldrich, you rest. Let your pack see to your needs while I work with her." "I'm not leaving her alone. I'll be with her the whole time," Kaelin interjected. "I promise. Nothing will touch her." Aldrich looked torn, but exhaustion was clearly winning. Through the bond, Lynette felt how much the confrontation had cost him. How much just standing upright was requiring. "Go," she said gently. "Rest. I'll be fine. If anything happens, you'll know through the bond," she reminded him. "You'll feel it immediately." He pulled her close, pressing his forehead to hers. "Be safe." "Always," she whispered back, though they both knew it was a lie. There was no safety anymore. Not for either of them. Only survival. And tomorrow night, under the full moon, that survival would be tested in blood and fire and ancient ritual that had decided the fate of packs for millennia. As Aldrich was led away by Zed and Darkin, as Elder Kara gestured for Lynette to follow her to the training yards, Lynette felt the weight of what was coming settle over her like a shroud. Tomorrow night, she would either save the man fate had bound her to, or she would watch him die. And in that moment, standing in a courtyard full of wolves who feared her, wearing a power she didn't understand, Lynette Hale made a choice. She would learn. She would fight. And she would not let the darkness win. Not again. Never again. The training yard was empty except for Elder Kara and Kaelin, the torchlight casting dancing shadows across the packed earth. Dawn was still hours away, but Lynette could feel time slipping through her fingers like sand. Every minute that passed was one less minute to prepare for what was coming. "Remove your shoes," Kara instructed. "You need to feel the earth beneath you. The moon-marked gift is tied to primal forces, earth-moon instinct. You can't access it properly if you're disconnected from the ground." Lynette obeyed, the cold earth shocking against her bare feet. Immediately, she felt something shift, a subtle awareness of the land beneath her, of roots growing deep below, of ancient power sleeping in stone and soil. "Good," Kara said, watching her closely. "You feel it already. That's your bloodline remembering what it was meant to do." She began to circle Lynette slowly. "Now, tell me what you felt when your power first manifested." "In the tavern." "What triggered it?" Lynette closed her eyes, remembering. Aldrich was hurt. The hunters were going to kill him. And I knew I couldn't let that happen. It was like something in my chest cracked open and the power just poured out. "Fear for your mate," Kara said. "The most primal trigger. But that's reactive. Instinctive. What we need is for you to access that power deliberately. To call it forth without waiting for catastrophe." "How?" "By understanding what you are." Kara stopped in front of her. "The moon-marked aren't just amplifiers of wolf power. You're bridges. Connections between the human world and the primal forces that give us our ability to shift. You exist in the space between, and that's where your strength comes from." Lynette opened her eyes. "I don't understand." "Close your eyes again," Kara instructed. "Feel the bond between you and Aldrich. Not just emotionally. Physically. Can you sense where he is right now?" Lynette reached for the bond, and immediately felt him, sleeping in his chambers, his body working to heal, his wolf restless beneath his skin. "Yes, I can feel him." "Good. Now go deeper. Feel his wolf. Not the man, the beast. The primal creature that exists beneath human reason." Lynette focused, reaching through the bond with tentative mental fingers. And there, beneath Aldrich's conscious mind, beneath his thoughts and emotions, was something wild and ancient. A presence that felt like moonlight and blood and the hunt. His wolf. It recognized her instantly. Mate, it growled, the word reverberating through her soul. Ours. Protect. Keep. I feel it, Lynette breathed. His wolf. It's so different from him. It's not different, Kara corrected. It's the same being, just a different aspect. And right now, that wolf is weak. Poisoned. Hurting. Your gift can heal it, but you need to consciously direct the power instead of waiting for instinct to take over. How do I do that? Imagine your power as water, Kara said. A river that flows from you to him through the bond. Right now, it's a trickle, just enough to keep the connection alive. But you can make it a flood if you choose. You can pour everything you are into him and wash away everything that's hurting him. Lynette tried to visualize it, tried to see her power as something she could control and direct. Silver light flickered around her hands, weak and uncertain. Stronger, Kara pushed. Don't be afraid of it. The power can't hurt him. It's designed to strengthen wolves, not harm them. What if I do it wrong? Lynette's voice was small. What if I make things worse? You won't, Kaylin said from her position guarding the entrance. Your instincts won't let you. The mate bond won't let you. Trust yourself, Lynette. Trust herself. When had she ever done that? When had she ever believed she was capable of more than surviving, more than serving, more than keeping her head down and hoping no one noticed her? But Aldrich had noticed her. Had seen something in her worth dying for, worth choosing, worth binding himself to for eternity. Maybe it was time she saw it too. Lynette took a deep breath and reached for that silver light inside her chest. This time, instead of waiting for danger to trigger it, she pulled. Deliberately. Consciously. The power responded like a living thing. Silver light exploded from her skin, brighter than it had been in the tavern, brighter than she'd thought possible. It raced down the bond toward Aldrich like lightning seeking ground, and through their connection she felt him jolt awake, felt his wolf surge to the surface to meet the flood of power pouring into him. That's it. Kara's voice was excited. Hold it there. Steady. Don't let it overwhelm him, just feed him what he needs. Lynette gritted her teeth, trying to control the torrent. It was like trying to direct a river with her bare hands. The power had its own will, its own purpose. But gradually, with concentration and effort, she managed to moderate the flow, to make it a steady stream instead of a destructive flood. Through the bond, she felt Aldrich's wounds knitting faster, felt the last traces of wolfsbane burning away under the onslaught of her gift, felt his strength returning, his wolf growing more solid, more present, more ready for the challenge ahead. Enough, Kara said finally. Pull back before you exhaust yourself. Lynette released the power, and it snapped back into her chest like a retracted rope. She staggered, suddenly dizzy, and Kaylin was there to steady her. You did it, the female wolf said, pride clear in her voice. Gods, Lynette, do you have any idea how much power you just channeled? It felt like I was dying, Lynette admitted. That's because you poured too much too fast, Kara said, but she was smiling. But you'll learn control. You'll learn moderation. For now, what matters is that you can access your gift deliberately. That you can heal him without waiting for catastrophe. She gripped Lynette's shoulders. Tomorrow night, when he fights Maelric, you'll need to do this again. Feed him power throughout the battle, keep his strength up, make sure he can heal faster than Maelric can hurt him. Won't that be cheating? Lynette asked. If I'm helping him during the fight? The Moonmarked have always assisted their mates in challenges, Kara said firmly. It's traditional. Expected. Maelric knew what he was agreeing to when he accepted the challenge. Her expression darkened. Though I suspect he's banking on you not knowing how to use your gifts properly. He thinks you'll be a liability instead of an asset. Then we'll prove him wrong, Lynette said, her voice harder than she felt. They trained through the night. Again and again, Kara made her access her power, channel it through the bond, practice controlling the flow. By the time dawn broke over the mountains, Lynette was exhausted and shaking, but she could call forth her gift at will. Could direct it. Could make it serve her instead of only responding to fear. That's enough, Kara said finally. You need rest before tonight. I need to see Aldrich, Lynette corrected. The elder smiled knowingly. I expected as much. Go. Be with your mate. But Lynette, she caught Lynette's arm as she turned to leave. What you're about to witness tonight. Alpha challenges are brutal. Maelric will try to kill him. And if Aldrich wins, if he defeats his cousin, he'll have to decide whether to show mercy or end the threat permanently. You're saying he might have to kill Maelric. I'm saying he will have to kill Maelric, Kara corrected. Because if he doesn't, if he shows mercy, Maelric will come back. He'll challenge again, or he'll work through proxies, or he'll find some other way to tear apart everything Aldrich has built. Sometimes, mercy is the cruelest choice. Sometimes, the kindest thing you can do is end a threat permanently. Lynette's stomach churned, but she nodded. She'd seen enough of Maelric to know Kara was right. He wouldn't stop. Wouldn't accept defeat. He'd keep coming, keep tearing at Aldrich and the pack, until someone ended it. She found Aldrich in his chambers, standing by the window watching the sunrise. He'd obviously felt her approaching through the bond because he turned before she entered, a smile softening his expression. You've been training all night, he said. I felt it. Felt you pouring power into me, pulling back, doing it again. He crossed to her, his hands framing her face. Thank you. I'm at full strength now. Better than full strength, actually. Whatever you did, it's like you burned away years of accumulated damage along with the wolfsbane. Kara said the moon-marked gift can do that, Lynette murmured, leaning into his touch. Heal old wounds along with new ones. Then I'll spend the rest of my life collecting wounds for you to heal, he said, trying for levity but not quite achieving it. Through the bond, Lynette felt his fear. Not of Maelric, but of what would happen to her if he lost. If he died tonight, she'd be alone in a stronghold full of wolves who already feared her, with no one to protect her from Maelric's vengeance. You're not going to die, she said firmly. You can't know that. Yes, I can. Because I won't let you. She pulled back enough to look him in the eyes. I didn't cross kingdoms and manifest impossible power and complete a mate bond just to lose you to some pretender who thinks he deserves your crown. You're going to win tonight, Aldrich. And I'm going to make sure of it. His eyes darkened with emotion. I don't deserve you. Probably not, she agreed, making him laugh despite the tension. But you're stuck with me anyway. He kissed her then, deep and desperate and full of all the things they didn't have time to say. Through the bond, Lynette felt his love for her, his terror of losing her, his determination to protect her no matter what came. When they finally broke apart, the sun was fully risen. Time had run out. Tonight, under the full moon, everything would be decided. The challenge circle was ancient, a ring of standing stones at the highest point of the stronghold, carved with symbols that predated written language. The entire pack gathered around it as the sun set and the moon began to rise, massive and silver and full of power. Lynette stood at the edge of the circle with Elder Kara and the King's Guard, her heart hammering against her ribs. Across from them, Maelric waited with Isolde and his supporters, his expression confident. Too confident. He's planning something, Kaelin murmured. He wouldn't look that smug if he was just relying on Aldrich being weak. Keep your eyes open, Zed agreed. If he's prepared some kind of trap, some trick. Then we'll counter it, Lynette said, her voice steadier than she felt. Whatever happens, Aldrich doesn't face it alone. The elder presiding over the challenge, an ancient male wolf named Ren who made even Kara look young, stepped into the center of the circle. His voice carried across the assembled pack with supernatural clarity. We gather under the full moon to witness an alpha challenge. Maelric Blackmore has disputed Aldrich Blackmore's right to lead this pack, claiming corruption and unfitness. As is tradition, this dispute will be settled in blood and moonlight. He looked between the two cousins. The challenge is to the death or to submission. No interference from outsiders. No weapons beyond tooth and claw. Do you both understand and accept these terms? I accept, Aldrich said clearly. I accept, Maelric echoed. Then let the moon judge which of you is worthy to lead. Both men stripped off their shirts, revealing bodies marked with scars and muscle. Then they began to shift. Lynette had seen Aldrich's transformation before, but it still stole her breath. The sound of bones breaking and reforming, flesh tearing and rebuilding, was visceral and terrible. Within seconds, two massive wolves faced each other across the circle, Aldrich in his midnight black, fur threaded with silver, Maelric in dark brown with amber eyes that gleamed with malice. They circled each other slowly, looking for openings, testing reactions. The assembled pack was utterly silent, watching with the intensity of those who knew their entire future hung on this moment. Maelric struck first. He was fast, faster than Lynette had expected, his jaws snapping for Aldrich's throat. But Aldrich was faster, dodging aside and retaliating with a rake of claws across Maelric's shoulder that drew first blood. The watching wolves stirred restlessly, but no one interfered. This was sacred, ancient, the oldest way of determining leadership. Through the bond, Lynette felt Aldrich's focus, his predator instincts taking over. She also felt something else, a pull on his energy, a constant drain that was slowing him down just slightly. Without thinking, she reached for her gift and poured power into him through the bond. The effect was immediate and dramatic. Aldrich's movements became faster, more fluid, his strength visibly increasing. When Maelric lunged again, Aldrich met him head-on, their bodies crashing together with enough force to shake the ground. They fought like the apex predators. They were all teeth and claws and savage fury. Blood stained the ground of the challenge circle, impossible to tell whose. Lynette kept the power flowing steadily, feeling the drain on her own energy, but refusing to stop. This was what she was meant to do. This was her purpose. But then she saw it, Isolde, standing at the edge of the circle, her lips moving in what looked like a chant. And in her hand, hidden in the folds of her dress, was something that gleamed silver. "She has something," Lynette hissed to Kara. "Isolde." In her hand. Kara's eyes narrowed, focusing on the other woman. Wolfsbane. Concentrated. If she can get it into the air, into Aldrich's lungs. That's cheating. It's clever, Kara corrected grimly. And hard to prove. She's not in the circle, she's not directly interfering. But if Aldrich starts to weaken, if the Wolfsbane takes effect, no one will question it. Lynette felt rage surge through her. After everything, after the assassination attempt, the betrayal, the exile, Isolde still wasn't done. Still had to try one more time to destroy the man she'd claimed to love. Not this time. Lynette reached deeper into her power than she ever had before, pulling from reserves she hadn't known she possessed. Silver light exploded from her skin, so bright several wolves had to look away. And she didn't just pour it into Aldrich. She spread it like a shield, a barrier of pure moon-marked energy that surrounded the challenge circle completely. When Isolde tried to release the Wolfsbane powder, the moment it hit Lynette's barrier, it burned away to nothing. Harmless smoke that dispersed in the wind. Isolde's face went white with fury. She looked at Lynette across the circle, and the hatred in her eyes was absolutely bottomless. But Lynette didn't care. Let Isolde hate her. Let the entire realm hate her. As long as Aldrich lived, nothing else mattered. In the circle, the fight was reaching its climax. Both wolves were bloody and exhausted, but Aldrich, strengthened by Lynette's gift, protected by her barrier, amplified by their bond, was clearly winning. He forced Maelric back step by step, his attacks more precise, his defense impenetrable. Finally, with a move almost too fast to follow, Aldrich got his jaws around Maelric's throat. The challenge circle went absolutely silent. Maelric struggled, but Aldrich's grip was iron. One bite, one twist, and it would be over. Maelric would be dead, the challenge won, the throne secured. Through the bond, Lynette felt Aldrich's internal struggle. Felt his wolf demanding he kill, eliminate the threat, protect the pack the way alphas had for millennia. But she also felt his human side, the part that remembered growing up with Maelric, the part that remembered the cousin he'd once called friend before ambition and hatred corrupted him. Kill him, Lynette thought through the bond. Not because she wanted death, but because she knew Kara was right. Because mercy now would only lead to more death later. She felt Aldrich's surprise that she was advocating for the killing blow. Felt his understanding that she was right, even if it hurt them both. His jaws tightened. Maelric whimpered, the sound of submission. Of a wolf admitting defeat. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then Aldrich released him, stepping back with a growl that was both warning and command. Maelric shifted back to human form, his hand pressed to his bleeding throat, his eyes wide with shock that he was still alive. Go, Aldrich said, human again as well, his voice rough. Take your supporters and leave the north. If you ever return, if you ever threaten my pack or my mate again, I won't be merciful a second time. You're making a mistake, Maelric rasped. Probably, Aldrich agreed. But it's my mistake to make. Now go, before I change my mind. Maelric staggered to his feet, supported by two of his wolves. As they led him away, Isolde moved to follow, but Elder Wren's voice stopped her. Not you, Lady Ravenska. Isolde froze. What? You interfered with a sacred challenge, Wren said, his ancient eyes hard. Attempted to poison an alpha during ritual combat. That is an offense punishable by death. I did no such. We all saw the wolf's bane, Kara interrupted. Saw you try to release it into the circle. Saw the moon-marked's barrier burn it away before it could take effect. She looked at Aldrich. The judgment is yours, my king. What is her fate? Aldrich looked at Isolde, the woman he'd tried to love, the woman who'd betrayed him at every turn, the woman who'd sold him out to hunters and still tried to poison him during his challenge. Through the bond, Lynette felt his exhaustion, his sadness, his absolute certainty that this needed to end. Exile, he said finally. Permanent exile from all wolf territories. You'll live, Isolde, but you'll live as you wanted, free from the beasts you despised. Free to be fully human in human lands. But if you ever set foot in the north again, if you ever threaten my mate or my pack, the mercy I'm showing you now ends. Permanently. Isolde's beautiful face crumpled. For just a moment, she looked almost human. Almost vulnerable. Then the mask returned, cold and hateful. You'll regret this, she said quietly. Both of you. The humans won't accept her. Won't accept what she represents. And when they come for her with fire and chains, when they burn her the way they burned all her ancestors, I'll be there. I'll be watching. And I'll smile. Get her out of my sight, Aldrich said flatly. Guards moved forward to escort Isolde away. She went without resistance, but her eyes never left Lynette, cold, calculating, promising that this wasn't over. The moment she was gone, the pack erupted in howls, victory, celebration, acknowledgement of their alpha's strength and mercy. Aldrich stood in the center of the circle, his body still marked with blood and wounds, and looked across at Lynette. Through the bond, she felt everything he couldn't say aloud. His love, his gratitude, his absolute certainty that saving his life had been worth any cost. She crossed the circle, ignoring protocol and tradition, and wrapped her arms around him. You won, she whispered against his chest. We won, he corrected, his arms coming around her. I couldn't have done it without you. Well, good thing you don't have to. He pulled back enough to look down at her, and in his storm-gray eyes she saw their future, difficult, dangerous, worth fighting for. Lynette Hale, he said formally, loudly enough for the entire pack to hear. Will you accept the position of my queen? Will you stand beside me, rule beside me, face whatever comes beside me? The pack fell silent, watching, waiting. This was the moment. The choice that would determine everything. Lynette looked around at the wolves watching her, some with hope, some with fear, some with simple curiosity about what this strange moon-marked girl would do. She thought about the tavern, about the life she'd left behind. About the girl who'd wanted nothing more than to be invisible, to survive, to never draw attention. That girl was gone. In her place stood someone new, someone stronger, someone chosen by fate and moon and a bond older than kingdoms. Someone who was done hiding. Yes, she said clearly. I accept. The pack erupted in howls again, and Aldrich kissed her as the full moon watched overhead, as silver light poured from her skin and wrapped around them both, as the mate bond blazed like a star being born. And for the first time since this insanity began, Lynette felt like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. 3 months later, the stronghold looked transformed. Where there had been division and suspicion, now there was cautious unity. Where there had been fear of the moon-marked, now there was at least grudging acceptance. It wasn't perfect, nothing ever was, but it was better. So much better than Lynette had dared to hope. She stood on the battlements, watching the sun rise over the mountains, her hand resting on the stone worn smooth by centuries of watchers. Below, the pack was waking up, wolves shifting back to human form after night patrols, traders arriving with goods from the border kingdoms, children laughing as they played in the courtyard. Her people now. Her responsibility. Her family. You're up early. Aldrich's voice came from behind her, warm and rough with sleep. Lynette smiled without turning around. She'd felt him approaching through the bond, had known the moment he woke and realized she was missing from their bed. Couldn't sleep. Too much thinking. He wrapped his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on top of her head. Good thinking or bad thinking? Both. She leaned back into his warmth, into the solid reality of him. I was thinking about how different everything is now. How 3 months ago I was serving ale and trying to be invisible, and now I'm... She gestured at the stronghold spread below them. This. Queen of the North, Aldrich said. Made to the Alpha King. Most powerful moon-marked in existence. Terrifying to half the realm and inspiration to the other half. I'm not sure which half is which, she admitted. Neither am I, honestly. His arms tightened around her. But we're figuring it out. Together. They'd spent the past 3 months doing exactly that, figuring it out. Establishing Lynette's legitimacy as queen, training her to control her gifts, building bridges with the pack members who'd been skeptical of her at first. It had been exhausting and terrifying and absolutely worth it. The North was stronger now than it had been in decades. The moon-marked gift amplified not just Aldrich's power, but the entire pack's cohesion. Disputes were resolved faster, hunts were more successful, even the children seemed healthier and happier. The old stories had been true. A moon-marked didn't just strengthen an alpha, she strengthened everything the alpha protected. I heard from Kaelin this morning, Aldrich said. She's been tracking Maelric and Isolde. Lynette tensed. And? They've settled in the southern kingdoms. Maelric's trying to build support for another challenge, but he's not having much success. Apparently, showing mercy to the man who tried to steal your throne makes you look strong, not weak. Who knew? You knew, Lynette said softly. That's why you let him live. I let him live because killing him would have made you sad, Aldrich corrected. And I'm constitutionally incapable of doing things that make my mate sad. She turned in his arms to face him. Liar. You let him live because you're a better person than he deserved. Well, that too. They stood like that for a long moment, just holding each other as the sun climbed higher and the day officially began. Through the bond, Lynette felt Aldrich's contentment, his happiness, his absolute certainty that despite everything they'd been through, this, her in his arms, the pack thriving below, their future stretching out bright and full of possibility, was exactly where they were meant to be. Elder Kara wants to see you this morning, Aldrich said eventually. Something about formal moon-marked training now that things have settled down. More training? Lynette groaned. I thought we were done with that. You're the last of your bloodline, he reminded her. She wants to make sure everything your ancestors knew gets recorded somehow. Preserved. So if you ever have children, he stopped, his expression going carefully neutral. Lynette's heart skipped. They danced around the topic of children, both aware that a child born of an alpha and a moon marked would be unprecedented. Powerful. Potentially dangerous if not properly raised and trained. If we have children, she said slowly, they'll need to know what they are. What they're capable of. You're right. She smiled up at him. Though I'm not sure I'm ready for that particular adventure yet. Can we maybe master the being queen thing first before we add raising supernaturally powerful offspring to the list? Deal, he agreed, relief evident in his voice. A commotion from below caught their attention. Riders approaching the gates, wearing colors Lynette recognized royal messengers from the Eastern Kingdoms. Think they're here to threaten us or negotiate trade? She asked. With you standing here looking like moonlight given form? Aldrich's eyes glinted with amusement. Probably negotiate. You're very intimidating when you glow. I'm not glowing. You're always glowing a little now, he corrected. Ever since the bond fully settled. It's like you're permanently touched by moonlight. Very dramatic. Very queen-like. Lynette looked down at her hands and realized he was right. There was a faint silver shimmer to her skin that she'd stopped noticing. Is that normal? Nothing about you is normal, Aldrich said fondly. That's why I love you. The words still made her heart stutter. He said them often now, had said them first about a month after she'd accepted the role of queen, whispered into her hair while they lay tangled together in the massive bed that was somehow now hers. She'd said them back immediately, unable to hold the words in any longer. I love you too, she said now, going up on her toes to kiss him. Even when you wake me up at dawn to tell me I have more training. It's almost mid-morning, actually. Lies. The sun is barely up. You've become very demanding since becoming queen, he observed. I like it. They made their way down from the battlements to the great hall, where the messengers were already waiting. 3 men in fine clothes, looking nervous and odd in equal measure as they bowed deeply to Aldrich and Lynette. Your Majesties, the lead messenger said. I bring greetings from King Laurent of the Eastern Reaches. He wishes to discuss a potential alliance between our kingdoms. And, he hesitated, he wishes to apologize for his participation in spreading false rumors about the moon marked 3 months ago. He understands now that he was misinformed about the nature of Her Majesty's gifts. Lynette and Aldrich exchanged glances. This was new. Most of the human kingdoms had been maintaining a cautious distance, neither openly hostile nor particularly friendly. An actual apology was unprecedented. What changed his mind? Aldrich asked mildly. The messenger looked uncomfortable. There have been incidents, Your Majesty, in kingdoms that spoke out most strongly against the moon-marked. Crop failures. Unusual weather. Packs that have been peaceful for decades suddenly becoming aggressive. He swallowed hard. Some are saying the moon itself is displeased with how Her Majesty has been treated. That the old powers are waking up and choosing sides. Lynette felt Aldrich's surprise through the bond, mirroring her own. That's not, I haven't done anything to those kingdoms. I wouldn't even know how. We know, Your Majesty, the messenger said quickly. King Laurent knows. But the superstitious believe what they believe. And right now, they believe that peace with the North with you is preferable to risking the moon's wrath. He produced a sealed letter. The king asks that you consider his offer of alliance. As a gesture of good faith, he's already arrested the hunters who participated in the ambush 3 months ago. They await your justice. Aldrich took the letter, his expression unreadable. We'll consider his offer. You may tell King Laurent that the North remembers both its enemies and its friends. How we proceed depends entirely on which category his kingdom falls into. The messengers bowed and were escorted out by guards. The moment they were gone, Kaylin appeared from the shadows where she'd been listening. Well, she said dryly. That's interesting. Think the moon is actually displeased? Or is this just humans being superstitious? Does it matter? Elder Kara's voice came from the other entrance. She'd apparently been listening too. If they believe the moon is taking sides, if they believe opposing Lynette brings bad luck, then they'll stop opposing her. The reason doesn't matter as much as the result. You think we should accept the alliance? Lynette asked. I think you should do what you've been doing since the moment you slipped that note under Aldrich's hand, Kara said. Follow your instincts. They've served you well so far. Lynette looked at Aldrich. Through the bond, she felt his thoughts aligning with hers. They needed allies. Needed to show that the North could work with human kingdoms, could be diplomatic as well as strong. This was an opportunity, but it was also a risk. Trust given too freely could be exploited. We'll meet with King Laurent, Aldrich decided. Under neutral ground. With appropriate safeguards. If he's genuine about peace, we'll hear him out. If this is another trap. His eyes glinted dangerously. Well, at least this time we know it's coming. Over the following weeks, arrangements were made. King Laurent came to the border territories with a small retinue, clearly nervous but determined. The meeting was tense, full of careful diplomacy and barely veiled threats on both sides. But by the end, an agreement was reached, trade routes reopened, hunters who'd targeted wolves would face justice, and most importantly, the Moonmarked would no longer be painted as monsters in Eastern Kingdom propaganda. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't even close to perfect. But it was a start. More kingdoms followed suit over the next months. Some genuine in their desire for peace, some simply afraid of being on the wrong side of whatever forces seemed to be favoring the North. Lynette learned to navigate the politics, learned to use her reputation, equal parts feared sorceress and sympathetic victim, to her advantage. She learned to be queen. 6 months after the challenge, Lynette stood in the Great Hall watching a celebration. The pack had gathered to honor the full moon, to run together through the forests, to celebrate another successful season. Music filled the air. Laughter echoed off stone walls, and children played while their parents danced. Aldrich found her on the edges of the celebration, his hand finding hers automatically. Not joining the dancing? Just watching, she said. Remembering. Remembering what? A girl who served ale in a tavern, Lynette said softly. Who wanted nothing more than to be invisible. Who never imagined she could be anything other than what she was born to be. And now? Aldrich prompted. Now I'm watching a celebration in my honor, in a stronghold I call home, surrounded by people I'd die to protect. She looked up at him, at the man fate had given her. Now I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. He pulled her close, and they swayed together even though they weren't really dancing. Through the bond, Lynette felt everything he felt, his love, his pride, his gratitude that a tavern girl had been brave enough to save a king. Thank you, he said quietly. For what? For slipping me that note, he said. For saving my life. For accepting the bond even though it terrified you. For being brave when you had every reason to run. For choosing me over and over again, even when it would have been easier to walk away. Lynette smiled against his chest. You're welcome. Thank you for being worth saving. They stood like that as the celebrations swirled around them. Two people who'd been brought together by betrayal and blood, who'd chosen each other against impossible odds, who'd built something beautiful from the ashes of what should have destroyed them. Later that night, as they lay tangled together in their bed with moonlight streaming through the windows, Aldrich traced the faint silver glow on Lynette's skin. Do you ever regret it? He asked. The bond. The crown. Everything that came after that night in the tavern. Lynette thought about it honestly. Thought about everything she'd lost, her anonymity, her simple life, her freedom from responsibility. Thought about everything she'd gained, power, purpose, love that transcended anything she'd imagined possible. No, she said simply. Not even for a moment. Not even when half the realm wanted you dead? Especially not then, she corrected. Because that's when I learned what I was capable of. What we were capable of together. She turned to face him fully. I was invisible before you, Aldrich. I was nothing. Now I'm everything, he finished. You're everything. Through the bond, she felt the absolute truth of it. To him, she was everything. And he was everything to her. It hadn't been easy. It would never be easy. There would be more challenges, more threats, more people who feared what they represented. But they would face it together. Alpha and mate. King and queen. Two people who'd found each other against impossible odds and built something worth fighting for. As Lynette drifted off to sleep in Aldrich's arms, the moon watching through the window, she thought about that terrified girl in the tavern cellar. The girl who'd heard hunters plotting murder and had to choose between safety and conscience. That girl had chosen conscience, had chosen courage, had chosen to save a stranger and ended up saving herself. And now, months later, surrounded by love and purpose and a future bright with possibility, Lynette Hale, moon-marked queen, mate to the Alpha King, knew she'd make the same choice again. Every single time. Hey there, beautiful souls. Thank you so much for joining me on this incredible journey with Lynette and Aldrich. If you loved this story, please smash that subscribe button and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I love hearing from my pack scattered across the world. What did you think? Did the mate bond make your heart race? Were you rooting for Lynette from the moment she slipped that note? Drop your thoughts below. I read every single comment. And if you want more Werewolf Shifter Romance, more impossible bonds, and fierce queens, stick around. We've got so many more stories coming your way. Until next time, beautiful souls, stay wild, stay brave, and remember, sometimes the greatest destiny begins with one small act of courage. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story. Love you all. See you in the next one.